And just when you think that you don't need to know, you utilize any of these skills or any of these drills, when the throwdown happened at the chaos that happened at the nation's capital on the 6th, some of the young staff members in the Senate, they knew exactly what to do because of these types of drills. So they were hunkering down in offices and following the protocol that they remembered from high school. So there you go. Hopefully we don't have to use them. Hopefully we don't have to. All right. So with that, today is the day in which you need to finish up the Indigenous movement activity. And to start off, though, I want to get our brains thinking here. All right. So I'm going to throw a question out there. I'm going to throw a question, and let's see if we can facilitate discussion. And those at home, feel free to put into the chat, and I encourage you to put into the chat. Is history, so you can use what we're learning right now, but is history made by individuals or by historical forces? So think about that. All the history that you have studied and looked at, is it made by individuals or by historical forces? Right? And I really just want to throw out there, may the force be with you because of my Yoda thing. But go for it. Absolutely, war could be a historical force. Movement of people, migration, could be that. It could be a disaster, like a famine. Is history made by individuals or by historical forces? What do we think? Those at home or here? What we got? Zach is going to give it a shot. Let's go for it.
I'm going to say both, honestly.
Oh my gosh, that's like the so IB thing. All right, sorry. That was commentary. Okay. Go ahead. Lay it on me.
The thing is, pretty much a lot of stuff is caused by conditions and an individual working together. Like, take World War I, for example. There were already tensions brewing, but it just took an individual to actually ignite that with the assassination of Archduke Transfer. Pretty much, it was a situation and an individual that came into one moment that ignited that entire part of history, which would continue with that momentum going into World War II and Cold War.
Okay.
Pretty much, it was, like I said, it was a historical force and an individual. Going with other historical forces to prove that isn't just individuals. How many natural disasters do we know of that were never able to be prevented and were never caused by a person? Like Katrina, all those events.
Okay. All right. Sometimes, though, natural events or disasters, how we respond to them, could set up, maybe change down the road or ways of looking at things. An example could be the hurricane that hit Galveston that totally wiped out the governmental system and set up a commission to address the natural disaster, and that became kind of a precedent on how we can approach responses to natural disasters. So it may not have been caused by man, but how we responded to it could be something of change and of historical significance. All right. How about someone else? Let's go. And you can even apply it to looking at what we are studying right now in Indigenous movements as well. History made by individuals or by historical forces here. What do we know there? You think it's both? Well, you got to elaborate on what you mean by both.
And also obviously like it forces people coming out of it.
So, all right. So, but do you have? Can you give me like a concrete example? Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Like recent or past presidents, and then like forces, kind of thinking of like 9/11.
Okay. All right. Okay. You know, I suppose when you look at forces that, like an event like 9/11, and now you look at how did that event change the United States, but also globally? How did that one particular event? And then, you know, when you look at the effect of it, that could be it could be on a personal level, it could be on a national level, it could be certain laws, all that stuff. But it is that event that's putting it in motion. And then we can even think about even contemporary society here. You know, we teach art history here, so the issue with you know, the recent killings in the United States, or looking at even post George Floyd, right? And looking at that and how history is going to be made as a result of that. So all those things, you know, we got to take into consideration. So here, you know, on the screen, you see that is focusing more on indigenous people here, and you have like the Pine Ridge or the Wounded Knee Uprising. You have the storming of Alcatraz, and then also Indian boarding schools. Right? All those, in some ways, are a result of events that have happened or individuals who influence policies in those events. They are intertwined. It's hard to separate the two in terms of individual and historical forces. It's pretty hard to do that. So yeah, that's like the IB thing. They're interconnected. Yeah. It could be. You could be, because you're looking at that over time. All right. And so when you bring up the issue of police brutality, we can find that as a common thread in many periods in time here. And if we just look at in the United States, it's not, police brutality isn't just a contemporary thing. We can find all the way back in 1947 when they came out with a Civil Rights Commission to secure these rights. That's on that list. When you look at the civil rights movement and the splintering groups, that issue is there. So that can be viewed as definitely as a force, a historical force. Yep. All right, anyone else? All right, there are times, you know, I'm going to get you to kind of hurt the brain here by looking at stuff like that. You know, that's part of being in the IB class, is taking on those issues. Now, when we look at your indigenous movement activity, what are some things that you are learning about the movement that you focused on, whether it's Latin America, the United States, or First Peoples of Canada? What are we learning? What are some just general ideas at home, put in the chat, or here? What are just some like big takeaways so far? And we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but some big takeaways. What do you got?
Like movements are created on the idea of indigenous people wanting that they have been told from the history that it's theirs, their land, and it being stripped away and taken from them. So like a lot of it is just like, even though like it is like about, you know, integrating with society, our society norms, but they kind of want what they have had
is that concept that it's like not there.
Okay. So they perceive that it's not theirs anymore and that it doesn't belong to them?
No, it's been taken away.
It's been taken away. Gotcha. And so, and we're looking at, and you focused on the United States? Okay. Yeah. And we are seeing in contemporary times some land being returned, and that's creating some issues. But that is opening up the door when we see land being returned. Another way of looking at that is as a form of reparations. All right, so it does open the door to other groups talking about reparations. You know, and as I'm looking over here, they are using that with the Japanese internment. So if you had remembered when we were doing the Second World War, right here, redress reparations. So that issue is there. Sovereignty is another big one too. They talk about sovereignty. My son was kind of taken back when he took a class last year at the University of Minnesota when the professor came in and said, I was made an American citizen. It was not my choice. And it was an indigenous studies class. And my son's like, we had a conversation. I said, yeah, you know, in 1924, citizenship is conferred upon indigenous people in the United States, whether they wanted it or not. Sometimes we think that it's something that people want. Not everybody may want that. And it was an example. He had an example of his professor. But sovereignty is a big word. Sovereignty is just a nice fancy word over having self-control, self-determination of what is going to govern you. All right, that's big. That's big. You know, you can even break it down as like saying, I am the sovereign of me, this organ, this body. I am the sovereign. Okay, other stuff, other takeaways there. Sorry, digress. Other takeaways, other things that we're learning here. Give me another one. Give me another one. All right, go ahead.
I learned a lot about like the Native American boarding schools and like how they were forced to like leave their traditions behind and kind of like change almost who they were.
Absolutely. The old saying, kill the Indian, save the man, was the phrase, right? And so the Indian boarding schools were there to Americanize. So we look at Americanize, assimilate, acculturate, but it's part of the process. Another part of that process was given citizenship too. Was about the thing though is they go to the boarding schools. What was the purpose? Besides, you know, they go to the boarding schools, they can't practice their language and their religion. What was the goal?
Like I know like a lot of boarding schools also like religion was a big part.
Okay.
And then so maybe just trying to change them into more like an American almost, like with English and then Christianity, I think played a big role.
So it is part of that. You're right. The goal is to Americanize. I mean, when they're going to school, what are they learning? If for those who have looked at the boarding schools, you know, you went to the board, you know, let's say you go to the boarding school and you look at the curriculum, what are they learning? What's that? They're learning American history, what is perceived as the history, but they're also learning vocational skills, what it is to be what's expected of a woman and what's expected of a man and the types of trades and all that. The flaw in some ways of that is when they got done with the Indian boarding school, where did many of them go? They might have gone back to the reservation where opportunities might not necessarily be there to practice what they just learned. So they would have to leave the reservation and go to the city. And once they get to the city, it's kind of like, the thought was, blend in and all that stuff. So Indian boarding schools can be around for a while, be around for a little while. In Canada, we'll also have Indian boarding schools. So this is not just the United States. In Canada, Indian boarding schools actually last longer than the United States. Okay. I need one more, because I am greedy. Give me one more. Possible. What are we learning? Whether it's events, people, just Zach, what do we got here?
Just more to give a specific event. A lot of the times they aren't after any sort of monetary gain. They're after the land, like the Black Hills incidents. After Custer's Last Stand and all those events, they're currently pretty much they're offered interest for the Black Hills that gave Mount Rushmore with interest, which has currently risen to $1 billion. But the thing is, they aren't taking it because they only want the land. They don't want the money.
Because they know the sacred value of that area. There are several tribes that view that area as sacred. That is like the birth of their tribes. Their nation is there. And so, yeah, the Black Hills. Some of the Black Hills has been returned, but not all of it. And so they want the Black Hills, and that'll be interesting to see how that plays out down the road. Okay. All right. So there we go. So with that then, I appreciate those that have shared, and I do encourage more to do that. Think about that for tomorrow, because I'll ask about what we have learned about this as well and some takeaways. I will give you the rest of the hour here to work on this. So those at home can stay on, or you can exit and have a fantastic day.